Hello and welcome to the Classical Next podcast, the global platform for the ideas and the people redefining classical and art music worldwide. I'm your host, David Taylor. Today, I'm talking with American saxophonist Lucas Ingle and South Korean composer Shin Kim. Both Lucas and Shin attended Classical Next 2026 in Budapest. Lucas as part of the Classical Next Fellowship Programme, and Shin as a showcase artist. After meeting there, they both began working on a collaboration to create new music. And we thought this would be the perfect thing to explore to see the power of making connections. In this conversation, we dive into how international conferences create spark points for cross-border artistic collaborations. We look at the consortium model and how it offers a sustainable, entrepreneurial pathway for commissioning new works, expanding repertoire, and reaching broader audiences. We also explore the practical mechanics of collaborating remotely across time zones, advice for pitching and showcasing new projects, and why young musicians must embrace vulnerability and connection. Before we start, the podcast is going to take a little break for summer. So, do make sure to check the Classical Next website and newsletter for updates on when the call for proposals and registration for Classical Next 27 opens. And if you want to stay in touch with me, you can find me at david-taylor.org. Right, that's enough from me. Let's jump in. Lucas and Shin, it is so good to see you both. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much
Thank
for
you very
having
much.
us.
Thank you for having us as well, yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Well, this is a really exciting podcast for me because normally we've been chatting to people who've either attended the conference or haven't attended the conference in the past. But this is probably the first time that we've had a conversation with people who are now collaborating as a result of coming on to the conference at Classical Next. You both attended this year. Lucas, you were on the fellowship program, and Shin, you were one of the showcase artists. So before we dive into this collaboration we've got and how you're working together, it would be great to hear about your experience in being both a fellow and a showcase artist and what you are hoping to get out of the Classical Next conference. Lucas, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I was a part of the fellowship program, which I think was so supportive to me in so many ways. Coming from studying back in the States in North Carolina, where I'm from, we don't have a huge classical music scene, so we're very insular. So stepping into a place like Classical Next, it's very overwhelming, to be fully honest, of all these people from all these major orchestras and other ensembles. So having the fellowship program was a little bit of a step up to feel more comfortable in such a eye-opening space. Um, so it really was a stellar experience to be able to just again have a little bit of footing when jumping into a new avenue. Yeah.
Definitely. And what were you hoping to get out of attending as well?
Honestly, I was just going in with a completely open mind. That was myself and my other fellows from our institution. We're really just trying to see what's out there. So I just kind of came with an open mind in my notebook, ready to see where it takes me.
Always a really good outlook to have. And Shin, being a showcase artist is something very different to that as well. So can you tell me a little bit about that experience and also what you were showcasing at the conference as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was such an honor for us, and just of course, including myself, to just participate in this wonderful Classical Next. But before that, we were just focusing on our works because we have to present something in front of the international, audiences. But like after arriving to the venue, I was really surprised that it was way bigger than I expected and imagined. And I was really amazingly like happy to being able to meet like everyone like Lucas and like every other artist, and it was really good time for me to just meet them and have a conversation and eventually having this kind of amazing project as well. So it was amazing. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I've already alluded to the fact that you are now collaborating together. Can you tell us a little bit about what the project is that you're both working on now?
Yeah, so kind of as Shin mentioned with his showcase, his work Mew really struck me. After the performance, I pretty much had immediately introduced myself to Shin and said, "Hey, I think your compositional language would fit so nicely within the saxophone." And so, cut to a few months later, chatting. I've commissioned Shin to write his first unaccompanied work for the saxophone. So we've also just started a consortium to help fund this and also to get a wider reach of hopeful performances once the piece arrives. A very unique part of this work is that it's going to be written for any saxophone. So if someone wants to explore it and programming it on the soprano saxophone or the baritone saxophone, it really allows it for, I think, a lot of different soundscapes, which I think leads to a very programmable piece.
Definitely. And for yourself, Shin, is this something that is quite a new avenue for solo saxophone, or what's this collaboration been like for you so far?
Well, for saxophone, I only written for like brass bands and the ensembles of the saxophones, but it's like for solo, just only one saxophone is my first time. But I'm really excited because I mean the saxophone, the instrument itself, can produce lots of different sounds, and it has a wide range. It's kind of like my new adventure for this instruments and musical language. And as Lucas said, that it's like with my musical language, I think the saxophone instrument can go really, really well, I think. And I really hope that I can create a nice piece for Lucas and every other, saxophone players.
Definitely. Well, Lucas, you've already alluded to the fact that you went up and spoke to Shin after his showcase performance and started this dialogue. I'd love to dive into that a bit more. Sort of, how did you get started in coming up with this idea? What were those initial conversations like, and how did you do that at such a big and busy conference as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I am wanting to go, forward with a commission and opening up to a consortium, my kind of intentions are always to find what the composer is looking for. I don't really like to go in with I'm looking for this instrumentation with this sound with these techniques. I'm really more interested in the composer than anything. So I think that made the process a lot easier than you'd assume. Of just saying like, "Hey, let's keep in touch. Let's continue the conversation and kind of see what scheduling allows." So I don't really want to be involved too much with the compositional process outside of figuring out what actually is possible or what needs to be shifted for ergonomic purposes. But I really want Shin's piece, not my opinions on what it should be. So.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And Shin, for yourself, how was it sort of being on the other side of this as a composer, being approached at conferences? Sort of, how did you sort of input into that dialogue, and how has it been for you?
Well, if I remember correctly, it was just after like my piece was performed, and Lucas just came to me and just like we we had a conversation a lot, and we had a chat. But I was quite surprised because like Lucas was the only one person that brought the. Of course, it was not this very specific idea then, but it was like he showed his like enthusiasm, and I was really shocked. Like it was good, in a good way, of course. So we exchanged other contacts, and we just kept going on our conversation, and we came to this.
It's incredible. Well, I'm really curious about this consortium model and why have you decided to use that going forwards? What are the benefits of it, and how does it work both for yourself, Lucas, as a commissioner, but also for yourself, Shin, as a composer as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's honestly the standard path for us saxonists back in the States. Just because we are always, at least compared to most other instruments, really starving for more rep. And always looking for new pieces. And as the person leading the commission and the consortium, the most important thing to me is that this piece lives a life outside of my kind of circuit with the piece, or if that be the premiere or recitals following. And I think the consortium path is the best way of doing that because it confirms that you're going to have people with the score in their iPad or on their music stand. Um, and then again, it also does give, some extra benefits to those that want to join of having exclusivity for a while, And of course, having easier contact with myself and Shin if they, also have input come the first, round of the scores arriving. And I think it's really just great to have a lot of people involved in something. And again, especially with this being Shin's first work for saxophone, but bringing more of his music to a audience here in the States, I think it's a one of the best ways of doing that, of just having larger reach from day one rather than trying to jump around to a bunch of institutions trying to find money from a singular person.
And for yourself, Shin, how's it been as a composer with this model?
I mean, like for composers, I think like most of the composers are very familiar with the like just writing for some like just one person or one organization. But I think it's really, really nice, and clever an approach to the music itself because I mean for us contemporary music composers often we don't have like a lot of like experiences or like performance chances of our pieces. For example, like I if I write a piece for like any person, then like he or she can play, but other people may not know the piece itself, and also if they know the piece, like the contract itself is like it is bound to the person who commissioned the piece. But this model is really, really different because I write the piece and they just play my piece, and they are just lots and lots of people. And as Lucas said, it's like it can be a good model to just like spread my music, and they can enjoy my music, and also audience can have some chances to listen to some like Asian composers' music they never have heard before. So I think it's very nice, and it can be a really nice new model for the composers as well.
Kind of along with that, with everything Shin's saying, there's a very entrepreneurial aspect of leading a consortium because you have to find very specific language that's going to attract a large audience outside of, hey, play this really good piece because you don't have, a large portion of the composition yet. You're not able to market it with recordings, until later on after the score arrives. So it really does ask for you to be extremely intentional with what you're trying to get out of, the work, which I think is a nice challenge for everyone and kind of asks us to consider our thoughts a bit more.
With that in mind, what have been some of the tips or success stories in that you found in using that sort of shared language and ways of getting this to for people to buy into it? What have you found success with, and potentially what has not worked, and that you've learned from as well?
Yeah, so I've recently started I got a kind of small social media campaign that's starting to ramp up as I have more promotional material. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is something that we can forget. But my local like saxophone community and musical community is really the best place to start of asking people, hey, do you have time for coffee? I'd love to chat, and kind of leading with, hey, this is this project I'm working on, and not trying to be too much of a salesman about it of like, hey, buy in right now, but just hoping to get some excitement from other folks. But again, I think we always want to jump to the large scale of like, okay, how can I get people from all over the world to join by tomorrow? But starting with your local community and then expanding from there is, I think, the best way of approaching things.
Definitely, I think that's really good advice to take on board. I'm curious with this model because there's now more stakeholders. Shin, you're having to think about more people who will be listening to the music. Have you found that this model has affected your compositional approach, or is it the opposite, that it's more freeing because you're not having to compose it for one particular audience?
Well, my compositional goal is to like make my music being able to be approached by like lots of audiences, even though they don't have any like musical experience like of contemporary music or something. So personally, I think that it's like many contemporary composers, like they just write their own music using their own voice. So often forgetting their like the vast majority of audiences like are like not familiar with the avant-garde music or something. But I'm kind of it's very cautious for me to say this, but it's like I often think I'm often against this. So I want to write my music that it is like enjoyable to like many other, like we say a lots of, major audiences. So this piece that I'm gonna write will be also the same. So the title of this piece will be Holo, which is like in Korean, alone. Is like it means alone in Korean. So, but it also says that it is like the holo. The meaning is that when we use the holo in Korean, it is used often in literature, not in the real like conversation. So I'm gonna like write this piece as a one piece of literature, so that I can tell a story about this kind of thing, and then to approach the various audiences.
Really good. It's fantastic you can have that level of flexibility and staying true to your compositional self as part of this. Wonderful. So, what I think is fascinating is collaboration is a subject that is in so many books and the topic of so much discussion. And that's the case if you're there in person in the same country from the same culture. Collaboration across multiple borders, time zones. We're doing this across 3 different time zones in this podcast. Countries, the internet, etc., is even more complicated. Can you tell me a little about this collaborative process when it has been remote, digital, and across cultures, languages, and time zones?
Honestly, I think that's one of the most exciting things about this. Looking at it more from a musical and cultural perspective, I kind of find it almost as a duty as a saxophonist to continue projects like this because we have the privilege of being such a young instrument that so many composers across the world are attracted to for, as the reason Shin has mentioned, of this unique flexibility. Um, and these colors that you can't really find anywhere else. So if you do some deep diving on the saxophone, you can find, various Carnatic saxophone players from South India, or you can find, of course, the great jazz musicians back from the States of, these sounds that are completely different coming out of the same instrument. So I kind of take that as a responsibility of myself to continue to use it as a diplomatic tool to discuss different social and cultural ideas in a medium that I think many people can understand. So I find that it's just something that we have to work out. If it's finding weird times of day to chat, or just communicating by email or text, whatever it may be, those kinds of challenges, are very insignificant when it comes to the greater goal of what we're trying to do here. So.
Fantastic. And how about you, Shin? How has that process been for this collaboration across cultures, time zones, the internet?
Well, for me, it was kind of, like I'm kind of familiar with this kind of thing because, like, as a composer, we don't travel a lot. So if I get a commission from like Europe or America, then like I get some emails like very weird time in Korea. So I often stay in London as well. So if I get some emails from Korea, then it's like midnight or something. So, but it's like, but I mean, I find it is not difficult as like rather it is rather I mean is we have to enjoy this kind of thing because like in the back in the days we were not able to connect this kind of very in a real time because like of course the time zone might be different, but it's like if we if we write something and just press a button, then it goes like just right away. So I mean many composers in Korea, they were afraid of this kind of being far away from the mainland of music, like Europe or America. But nowadays it's quite different. It's like it's very normal thing. So for me, I mean, I'm also very excited about this, but not very. I don't feel any difficulty of this kind of thing. So it's like I'm very excited rather.
Fantastic. Do you think this approach is potentially the one that is going to go forward in future? That more people should be collaborating like this across borders and cultures, and also finding maybe a consortium model to make things such a success? I always feel so bad for composers when it comes to sort of the world premiere trap, that people love world premieres and yet getting second, third, fourth, fifth performances is such an uphill battle. So do you think maybe sort of there's a benefit to this cross-cultural approach and the consortium model as to what this should be in the future?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I have always thought of it as a quality over quantity situation of maybe postponing large, projects that you're interested in just to make sure that you can find yourself in a situation where, yes, you're investing enough in this piece where it is going to have other performances and there is going to be other people interested in performing it. And I think that this is, again, one of the best ways of doing that. And especially whenever, connecting from other countries, to be in a situation where folks who would maybe never hear insert name of a composer just because of distance or whoever is popular in your community, it can kind of throw things off a little bit, which is good. It's nice to hear new music regardless of the style or wherever it's coming from. I think that's a part of growing and learning and enjoying this wonderful thing that we all share of music. So it's definitely important to continue to keep that.
Definitely. So what are your hopes with this project going forward? Where do you want it to end up in the eventually, and where do you see its future?
Kind of like I mentioned before, this I just really hope that this can live a life outside of myself. And again, something that really means a lot to me is programming. I have found that other recitalists and myself included sometimes really struggle with building programs that touch an audience in a way that makes sense and has a cohesion to it that maybe throwing a random concerto and then a showpiece doesn't really do. So again, having the flexibility of this work, allowing that to happen, and because these horns are very different when it comes to the sounds that they produce, so I can kind of change that based on the circumstances of the program, and I think other people joining in on that same kind of idea is the goal for me. Because at the end of the day, I want to build a recital or whatever it may be, collaborating folks that isn't just satisfying for myself, but the audience can have something that they can take home with them. So that's the goal.
Fantastic. And Shin, for yourself as the composer, is there anything in addition to that that you'd be looking for in future?
Well, as a composer, also it is like very, exciting thing, and we can think of lots of things because the good thing about this model is, or just one of the good things of this model is the flexibility, and it's like, which means that like many other, audiences, not only, in the venue, but it's also it can spread to the other places of the venue, or even the city, or even the country. As we said, as a it's a kind of new era for this kind of thing because we can share this kind of thing globally. So I think this model is kind of the most suitable thing for this generation, and not only to the performer themselves, but it's for composers as well.
Very much so. Really, really exciting. Well, the call for proposals for Classical Next 2027 is just around the corner for both conference sessions, showcases, project pitches, or everything that's going on. Shin, you've gone through the process of submitting a proposal for a showcase. So I was wondering if you could give some advice on potentially what was helpful or you felt sort of stood out in your own proposal, and then potentially looking to the future, any takeaways or like how to make the most of being a showcase artist when you're at the conference as well.
Well, the advice I can give like to the applicants can be like be yourself, because the identity of themselves is like very important, but we often forget about that. So like we think a lots of different things of like of course I understand, like I often do that as well, but like there's some thoughts like I have to be in this kind of thing, so I have to write an application that can be appealing to the jury members. Of course, it is like it is valid, but more than that, like I think the jury members of the Classical Next and the Classical Next itself, I mean, they focus on like who are you? Who are you? Who can? What can you give to us? What can you give to to the global, audiences? So the authentic things, I think they have to focus on that one. And of course, like we have to have some musicality and artisanship, but it's like based on that we have to have like the thoughts that is like, who am I or who are we?
Fantastic. And then for if you're successful and you attend Classical Next, any tips for making the most of that showcase opportunity when you're attending as well?
Well, if somebody is lucky enough to be in the Classical Next, then like have a great chance of meeting everyone and just attend a lots and lots of showcases, and of course like some speeches as well. So like of course like presenting ourselves is like important, and this and the most of the reason is like going for the showcase is that one, but it is also like equally important to listen to others and like mix the idea and just find the essential of your art or something, whatever that is.
Fantastic advice. And Lucas, I know it's a different process for becoming a fellow, so I'll avoid the advice question for applying. But in a similar way, making the most of Classical Next as an attendee, what would you say is your advice to anyone attending in future?
Yeah, I mean, kind of comparing and chatting with some of the other fellows, like before and after, our session there. Something that I kind of took as a reoccurring theme was this certain level of vulnerability that was really important to have. And kind of, almost recognizing in ourselves, like, hey, we don't know everything. We're in a new place with new people, and kind of allowing whatever to that comes at us to approach it with open arms and an open mind. Because again, there's so many different ideas that are being proposed, a lot of different opposing and different ideas, um, that may strike a different chord than what we're used to back home and with our communities. So I think approaching those conversations and those ideas with a bit of understanding and sympathy is really important, but also on a more, personal scale. I think recognizing within yourself that you're so much more than just a musician or a composer or an arts administrator, and that you're chatting with other human beings and you're a human being, and that it's okay to not make everything just about music, 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 and to build personal relationships with folks, go out, have dinner, enjoy your time together in that way as well is just as valuable.
Fantastic. Such good advice there. Um, So as we come to the end of the podcast, what we do is we ask the people the same questions every time, as two quick rapid fire questions. So the first of these, then we'll go to Shin first, would be, if you could change one thing in the industry, what would it be and why?
As a composer, I want to change composers because like I'm not saying that it's like composer is bad or something, but it's like what we approach is sometimes is like it remains in the times in the back in the times like past, so back it's like, so like we have to think about the new things, but like our thoughts is sometimes very stopped in the some generation, but like we have to think about like the future, and also we have to think about like what the audiences really want. So like in the sense of that, I would say that it is like we have to change like some composers attitude. I would say.
Fantastic. And Lucas, how about you?
I would say just recognizing within ourselves and our communities that there's so much more out there than just the music that we create and that we work within. I find that a lot of times we, are only consuming concert classical music, or whatever art that we create, but understanding that the world that we come from has so many different beauties and sounds, and that these are all connected in some way. So, not being so insular, and that
Fantastic. And then finally, what gives you hope for the future of classical music, Shin?
Oh, that's really good question and also very difficult one. But I mean, the classical music is like the name of the music genre itself has the answer because it is a classical. So we maintain the good things. Of course, like we sometimes get rid of some, redundant things as well, but it's like we try to like find the essentials of the music and we try to maintain this kind of thing and develop like eventually. So I think that will be the engine of our own music and have like bring a power uh, to us to go on, I think.
Fantastic. And Lucas, what gives you hope for the future of classical music?
My answer is pretty similar to Shin's answer from the first question, is just the drive and ambition of young musicians to connect with audiences. It seems that especially after COVID, there's just been this pull to wanting to get people in concert halls or in performance spaces. And that just, I don't know, that makes me so excited and gives me hope that people want to get out of their practice rooms, out of their studios, and get in front of people. And I think that will really help spark some good change, is, consuming music in person.
I'd like to thank Lucas and Shin for joining me, and thank you for listening. Before I go, Classical Next 2027 is heading to Katowice, Poland from the 11th to the 14th of May next year. It's that 1 week where the whole industry actually gets together in one place, and I would love for you to join us. Registration is already open at classicalnext.com and we'll be opening up the call for proposals soon. If you have any thoughts on today's episode, or if there's someone you think I should be talking to for the show, you can find Classical Next on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, or just get in touch through the website. And if you found the show useful, please do subscribe and share it with your colleagues. I'm David Taylor, and I'll see you next time.